my bachelor's degree is actually in business management. And so from a very early age, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I hadn't, like, when I was 18, I had no idea what that meant or what that really looked like. And I kind of fell into HR when I graduated college. And so there was this moment when I decided to go out on my own where I combined like what I thought I wanted to be when I grew up when I was 18 with the HR side of the house and sort of made this decision to go out on my own. So I, at the time, was working for a small medical device company, and they were in the process of being acquired by a really large global organization. And a couple of things happened during that time. The first thing was I realized I did not want to be part of a large global organization anymore. So I knew that my time there was going to come to an end, and I knew that I was going to exit that organization. My manager at the time, who was the head of HR, asked me to stay for a little while longer and gave me what I now realize was the breathing room to figure out what I wanted to do next. And so that was the moment. And there were sort of two things happening. There was a professional part of my story and a personal part of my story. So the personal part of my story is I have 12, almost 13-year-old twins, and they were leaving daycare and going into kindergarten. And I really wanted to be, this is pre-COVID, I really wanted to be in their lives in a different way. I wanted to be able to volunteer at school. I wanted to be able to have all the flexibility in the world to just be a really present mother to them. And that road led me to thinking about consulting. And then the professional path really was this idea that I was looking around me. So this was 8 years ago. I was looking around me and seeing my industry, biotech and life sciences, just explode. And there were organization after organization that was sort of launching. And there were all these really small startup biotechs. And my network from my previous organization were all going to these small biotechs. And what I was hearing from all of them was that they just need help. They need help from a people perspective. They need help thinking about culture. They need help managing the development of their managers and of their people. And so that was the spark for me that really started to think that there could be something there, that I could go into consulting, that I could sort of make an impact more broadly in all of these small organizations, and that I could be the kind of mom that I wanted to be for my kids. And so there were all of these things sort of speaking to me at that time that really led me down the path of wanting to go into consulting. And so I sort of decided to just jump 2 feet in and do it.
So did you like do a little prospecting before you left your job saying, oh, to your ex-colleagues, would you hire me if I pulled the plug here? I mean, did you try to make the jump a little bit less scary?
I actually went through my entire LinkedIn roster and I went line by line, and I actually had to think about who do I know that could give me advice. I came out of those meetings with new clients. And so people saying, I would hire you in a heartbeat if you decided to do this on your own. If you decided to go into consulting, I would, do this and do that. And so I knew going into it that there was a small pipeline of people that would support me in this venture. And it was either supporting me through, referrals or introducing me to other people or connecting me with other people, or they were directly ready to hire me right then and there if I decided to go out on my own. I did a tremendous amount of research in terms of what was going on in the market. And I talked to everybody from finance folks to HR folks to business leaders, just anybody that would be willing to give me any little nugget of advice. And I kept a notebook. I just would write notes in the notebook of all the advice I was given. And I took that notebook and ultimately decided the type of consultant that I wanted to be.
So you pulled the plug, you set up your own business. What did you do your first day on your own?
I remember this day. I set up my home office, or I didn't at the time have a home office, and I set up a home office and I used my guest bedroom, and we had a desk we put in there that weekend. And I opened up my laptop and I just started emailing all of my contacts again and reconnecting with them and saying, hey, it's been a couple of weeks since we talked, or in some cases, a couple of months. I did it. I'm on my own. Is there any interest in sort of having some conversations? I would say it was probably a good month before I started to hear back from folks. And so what I ended up doing during that first day, ultimately into that first month, was I set up billing systems. I set up marketing material. I created the website. I started to think about the name of my company and what that would be, because I hadn't done that yet. I called a neighbor who was a graphic designer and he threw a logo together for me. And so it was a lot of just organizing what I needed to do in any given day. And then the first client hit. it was a former colleague of mine, and I got hired to do a manager development program. And it was wonderful. It was a 6-month project, and it was such validation for me that this is exactly where I wanted to be.
You also needed people to help you do the work. So
I
how
did.
did you kind of go through that calculus and think, oh, it's time for me to hire some help?
That was probably the biggest fork in the road for me. I started the company wanting to be a sole practitioner, just a one woman consultant working, 30 to 40 hours a week. And because the work was coming in so fast, and I'm so just grateful that that was happening, it created a good problem. And so there were conversations that I had with my husband around, what is the path? Do I want to grow this organization and make it something bigger so that it's more impactful across a larger, swath of audience? Or do I want to start saying no to business and keeping, just me? And what I realized in that moment was that I had such a passion for running the business. I just wanted to grow it. It was, for me, the growing of the business was what was really attractive to me versus sort of the delivery of those services that we provided. Pretty eye opening for me because I love delivery, and I'm good at it. And I know it's something that I'm really good at. And I love standing in front of groups of people and delivering content. But for me, growing the business edged it out. And we realized I couldn't grow it without people, without the help of people. And so we needed sort of two support structures in place. The first support structure was an operational group of people who could help make sure that everything runs the way it's supposed to run. And then the second was we needed a best in class bench of facilitators who could deliver this content the way that I had been delivering it for years. That path sort of led us to starting to expand the business and think about it in a different way.
How did you handle the ebbs and flows of the financial aspect of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's the most terrifying thing about it. I remember when I decided to go out on my own, we had just bought the house we live in now. And we did it based on two incomes, two guaranteed incomes. And I remember us sitting down with a spreadsheet and him saying, you have a year. And if you can't sort of, make money in a year, then we need to be having a different conversation, either of where we're going to live, if we're going to sell the house, if we're going to, do XYZ, or if you're going to go back in house and get another job, or whatever the case may be. And so that was the first sort of moment of just financial concern, right? And then the good news is that it did it in a year. I did what I needed to do in a year to sort of continue to do what we needed to do and stay in consulting. In 2020, Tom lost his job during COVID. They had shut down most of the employees, with the exception of the manufacturing employees. And we had this funny moment where I sort of said to him in passing, wouldn't it be nice if you could help me day to day with some of the stuff I need? And we laughed about it. And then about 10 minutes later, I was like, wait a minute, but what if? And so then that was the other conversation of, we're putting all of our family eggs in this basket, and it has to succeed or else we're in trouble. I think that was the fire we needed to grow the business, quite frankly, because we weren't going to fail as a family. And that was, years worth of, Tom still is a strategic advisor for us, but he does have another full-time job. And the only reason we laugh about it, he's the only person that's ever quit Claria. He went back in house to go help a former manager of his. And so the opportunity for him to work with this other manager was really interesting to him. And him getting back into tech was really interesting. And so, it was for all the right reasons for him professionally why he went in there, but he still helps us part-time, which is great.
Rewind 7, 8 years ago. What advice would you give your younger self? And what advice would you give people who are sitting in a corporate job and thinking that maybe they want to go out on their own?
I get asked this question a lot, actually. So, in no particular order, get your affairs in order and make sure you can do it, right? Don't let something hold you back from that. And so, think about what it means if you're not going to make money for 6 months or a year. Think about what you do to sort of offset that, right? Think about what that looks like. I think the second piece of advice is become very clear on the service that you are offering or the thing that you are selling, and be unapologetic about saying no to something that falls outside of your wheelhouse. Because when you start to say yes to the things that fall outside of your wheelhouse, you actually start to dilute your brand. And then 3, do an incredible amount of competitive market research so that you are pricing yourself exactly where you need to be, and be unafraid to ask for what is fair market value for your services. I find that a lot of consultants, when they go out on their own in that first year, they are very much underpricing themselves. And what we found was that us and other consultants were getting hired because we were the cheapest, not necessarily because we were the best and we wanted to be the best. So we started to sort of think about that in a very different way. And we started to do a lot of market research. I didn't do enough in the beginning. We have a pretty big pulse on what's going on in the market right now to be able to say that we are squarely where we need to be from a pricing and a competitive market perspective.